Progress. We will start our meeting. Welcome to the Providence City Administrative Land Use Authority. It's 2:30 in the afternoon. We're at the Providence City Office Building. I'm Scarlett Bankhead. I'm the Administrative Services Director. I have Rob Stapley on my right. He's our Public Works Director. And Max Pierce is excused today. He's traveling. He did send Diana an email. I'll let her chat about that for just a second. As long as Rob and I make up a quorum, since we're a majority, but if the two of us have to agree. So if we can't agree, we'll have to move it to the next meeting when all three are here. We generally can agree. So we have two items. Oh, let me introduce everyone else. We have Ryan Snow, our city manager, Kai Cameron, our city recorder, Diane Campbell, our zoning compliance, and April, who does stormwater and code compliance for us. So, and then we do have representatives for both items on our agenda, and we'll have you introduce yourselves when your agenda item comes up. The first item on our agenda is a conditional use for a retaining wall. It's a request by Pillar Homes for Brett and Idina Ward for a retaining wall located at 879 Grandview Drive. This is a continuation from our last meeting. And so Diane, do you want to come up and kind of review the new information? And then Dave, if you want to come up to the table, that would work.
Okay, as Scarlett stated, this is continuation from the meeting that was held on September 8th. We have some new drawings that were submitted, and the site plan was submitted and stamped September 13th. I did get an email from Max saying that he didn't have any more comments on both of the agenda items today. Everything is the same as was listed before in the previous staff report. And we have the new plan drawings, and they should have been included in the packet. New plan drawings and then a new site plan. And I don't know if you want me to say anything else about it. That's good. Okay.
So Dave, did you get the packet? Have you had a chance to see? Okay. All right. So, just so I understand now, it looks like in the old drawing, and correct me if I'm wrong, in the old drawing, you were going to be 3 feet off with like the 10-foot wall.
Yes.
But now you're going to be 18 inches off with a 4-foot at the highest point. It will be a 4-foot wall, and it decreases in height as it goes to the east, right?
Goes to the south. So from the
south.
actual garage doors where they enter is on the south side of the home. So from the driveway itself will drop 12 inches and 30 feet. The wall is in the same location. The main retaining wall is in the same location as last time. It'll be at a height of, from the footing, it'll be a height of 11 feet. From the grade, it'll be a height of about 10, a little less than 10. And then that main retaining wall is still 3 feet off the property line. But my proposal was to just add another retaining wall. It doesn't have to be engineered because it's not, that main wall is engineered for the actual backfill and driveway. That secondary retaining wall is right on the property line, but it would only be 4 feet tall. And then, so the main retaining wall will be exposed 6 feet on the back, like the back, probably what, 15 or 20 feet on the south side. Then, and then that secondary retaining wall would be only about 4 feet off the grade of the property, the adjacent property. The west side of the retaining wall, we're going to build up a dirt ramp that goes all the way, slopes all the way down into the backyard, and then it'll have a retaining wall that we'll have to step, go 4 feet and step it across and go up the rest of the way. create that ramp. But the backside of the retaining wall won't really be exposed at all. It'll be mostly covered by. So,
Wasn't it the side yard that we were mostly concerned about when it came to meeting our code? And what could be exposed to the neighbors at what height?
Yeah, it's the side yard setbacks. But, so on your plan, you've got 12 to 18 inches of dirt grade. And that's on the exterior of the 4-foot retaining wall, right?
yeah, yep. So by the time we backfill, because the footing is down lower than the actual grade of that side yard of the home on the south. So by the time we fill that up to fill the footing against the wall, we have about 18 inches, a foot to 18 inches of fill over it.
So the footing's on the property line, but the actual wall's gonna be
No,
18 inches
so-
off?
No, the footing for the main retaining wall is about a foot in from the property line. So to create that secondary retaining wall, we're gonna have to, and that won't be, that wall, what we'll have to do is we'll have to pour the main retaining wall and let that set up.
So when you're talking the main one, you're talking the 6-foot one, or,
Yeah,
yeah,
One that's 3 feet in.
yeah,
okay,
Yep.
so you'll pour the 6-foot one.
correct. Yeah, we have to pour that one first and then let that, and then we'll have to strip it and let it set. And then we'll pour that secondary retaining wall right on the property line and tie it in to the main one with probably a few locations we'll have to tie it in. But that secondary one is not really an engineered wall. It's not holding the retainage. It's not really, is what's holding the driveway. It's the main retaining wall.
And your engineering drawings, I don't see much fill being put on top of the south side of that footer.
It's not, I mean, we have to have 30 inches, obviously, from the bottom of the footing to the fill. Right now, where the footings are dug, we've dug them and they're actually poured already, but they're down below the grass line, like his grass line. We're down below his grass line about anywhere from 18 inches to 2 feet. So by the time we fill that in, we'll have our 30 inches of cover from the bottom of the footing to
So
the.
your secondary wall is going to extend up above your
Well,
footings.
We'll pour that secondary wall before it'll be down in, we'll pour clear down to the footing. So it'll be covered as well. And we'll tie it into that main wall so that, it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to, like I said, that secondary wall doesn't have to be engineered. Blake from the county came up and was doing a shear inspection on the house. And I explained to him what I was doing there. And he said, yeah, you're okay as long as that main wall is what has to be engineered. So the secondary wall is just for aesthetics. So,
And your plan to deal with the exposed side of the wall is because you're doing a planter box and you're gonna have trees there that cover up the exposed side of the wall.
it is. It's make it aesthetically more, hopefully more pleasing.
So do the homeowners, do they know that they've got to, I mean, very seldom do we get involved in landscaping. In fact, almost never on private property. But, well, I take that back. Almost never on a single family residential
Sure.
unit. We get involved in a little bit with commercial landscaping, but in order to keep that wall compliant, they're going to have to keep that landscaping up. They're aware of that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've shown her what we got to do to make it work. She's okay with it.
And I guess the bottom line that I want to make sure of is in all of what you're doing, I'm not going to get a phone call from the neighbor in 2 months that says that you're on their property or that you've created a berm on their property or anything like that. The
Yeah.
neighbor to the south.
No, and we won't even disturb his grass.
Okay.
So it should be.
So when all is said and done, your slope up on your 4-foot wall and then the exposed side of the 6-foot wall, all of that is on the property owner's property. There's nothing, no easement needed, no, okay.
The pictures, I mean, it's not perfectly to scale, and I just drew it myself, but it's pretty close to what it will look like when it's done.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions for you. One is the secondary wall. You kind of mentioned something, and I just want a clarification. Is the secondary wall attached to the main wall?
So we'll have to attach it, probably on the corners and wherever we, off that outside corner of the main retaining wall, we'll probably have to attach it there. And then wherever we end it, because the grade, as you go towards the road, the grade actually goes up. And so the main issue of this whole retaining wall is more down on the first 20 feet. So that secondary wall, I don't even think it'll go all the way up to where the main wall ends. By the time we get up so high, the grass line and the grade of the home on the south is right up to that 4-foot high. And so wherever we get to that point, we'll return it into the main retaining wall. And then probably somewhere in the middle, we'll probably create a T and go across and just take some rebar and tie it in to the main wall.
Okay.
Just so that secondary retaining wall doesn't have any, it's not going to go anywhere.
Is it structurally required? I mean, I think it's fine. I'm just delving into some of the questions. Is it structurally required to be attached where it's not structurally designed as engineered? I'm just curious.
It doesn't have to be attached.
But you're doing it aesthetically to make sure it doesn't separate. Okay. All right. Next one is I assume the 6-foot wall is on undisturbed or fully compacted soil, and you're not building a 10-foot wall and then putting a 4-foot wall in front of it to cover up the bottom 4 foot of the wall. Does that make sense? What I'm asking?
It does. So the main retaining wall is 10 feet. I mean, that's coming around the west wall and then coming around that curve, the first like 6 to 8 feet. That is a 10-foot wall, that main retaining wall, and it's engineered to be 10 feet. And then
So it'll be the full height. It'll be full 10 feet. And then you're looking to build a 4 foot in front of it, cover 4 foot, which will make it appear as if it's only a 6-foot retaining wall, but it's really truly a 10-foot retaining wall. Is that okay? Obviously I'm not a voting member. I'm just asking kind of questions to understand what the design and the build there is. So anyway, I'm just curious, but I appreciate that. That's helpful. Okay. So as she looks that up, you'll use the 10-foot retaining wall specification in the plan that you submitted. That's the one you're going to go with, the thickness of the rebar, the thickness of the, I mean, number 5 bars rather than number 4. You're going to go, okay.
The footing's already poured. We've got number 5 bar every like 10 inches, 10 or 11 inches. It's all number 5 bar. It's a 5-foot wide footing. It's 13 inches deep instead of 10. It's a little deeper footing. It's all. The county inspected that footing. That's when it came to me that, hey, you gotta have another permit for this. But they already inspected the footing. They said, you're good, go ahead and pour it. But then before we do the main retaining wall, please go to get a permit for the rest of the wall.
Well, I'm kind of in a conundrum because I don't know, because it says greater than 6 feet in height. Rear and non-street side setbacks for retaining walls greater than 6 feet in height, or where the exposed side of the retaining wall faces out from the subject parcel without regard to height shall be subject to the same requirements as the main structure in the applicable zone. So I guess the question is do we count what's covered up as part of the, because that's a 10-foot retaining wall. There's no debate that it's actually a 10-foot retaining wall.
Right.
It's just that 6 feet will be exposed, and then that 6 feet will eventually be covered by landscaping. Because a 6-foot retaining walls 3 to 6 feet may be located within the non-street side or rear side setback, provided the exposed side of the wall faces into the subject property. So I'm still concerned that we're not, because cosmetically, we might be sort of meeting the ordinance, but I don't know that we're meeting the ordinance. That's my big concern. Brian, do you want to pull the ordinance up so that, or
Yeah, I can pull it.
Our engineer kind of led him to the idea of a terraced wall. We kind of make using the term loophole to our ordinance to accomplish a wall of the height of the beam. And this is his attempt to make a terraced version of a retaining wall by utilizing footings we had before.
You have the code site there. I can pull.
it's 10, 8, 3, and then you need to scoot down to in A, it's number 8.
Give me just a second. I'll pull that and throw it up to the.
So one last one back to Brush, I don't know what south that is. You go past the north side of Ridgeline, go through the roundabout and head up the hill. There's a road, I don't know what, I'm not sure what east that is. And it's got a retaining wall that's right on the property line. And they planted, it's right on the sidewalk and property line. And it's over 8 feet tall. And they planted some trees right there. You can hardly even see, you hardly even notice it's there, but it's there. And they've like kind of the same kind of thing. They've planted to kind of make sure that it's aesthetically looks good. Unless you kind of notice it, you don't notice it until.
I think that our code was put in place for that aesthetics more or less for a reason. I mean, the engineered wall is always structurally sound. Well, accomplish the goal, but the ordinance, I think, spirit of it was trying to keep nasty ugly concrete wall from one of the neighbors.
We'll probably plaster it. As far as by the time we put something in that planter box and plaster wall, and it'll should look aesthetically, it should look pretty nice. Just,
So this one does have a 3 foot. What size is your other wall? 3 foot. Okay.
the other walls, it'll be, the wall itself will be like almost 5 feet, but by the time we fill it, it'll be from grade, it'll only show about 4 feet. And like I said, when you go towards the road, that grade goes uphill, and so we'll get, I don't know how far it is, maybe 20 feet, maybe halfway. You get to where almost that wall is going to be that 4 foot that shows, and 6 foot is going to be at grade with the home on the south. And so it doesn't go the full length, it only goes part way. Then we're at grade. And so it's only like the back, I'd say back 20 feet, maybe 25 at the most.
but even then, the back 20 feet, whatever, higher than the 3 feet. So on number A, if it's less than the 3 feet in height, retaining wall, I read it as the retaining wall is not exempt from the setback requirement if it's greater than 3 feet, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I moved over to the height. I was trying to see,
If it defines any more on the height, the visible height or a structural height, okay?
the height of a building or structure shall be determined, so I'm in 10.8.4. The height of a building or structure shall be determined as the vertical distance as measured from the highest point of the roof or building or structure down to a point representative of the averaged finished grade of the land around the perimeter of the building or structure. So that, so it's not going off of where the footings necessarily are. It's going off of where the finished grade, the land or finished grade is. So we do have that. So that's how you measure the height. So
Is that an average of the entire length of the,
it
it says average finished grade.
does say average finished grade of the land around the
Is that
perimeter of
on?
the building or the structure.
Can you see it?
We're seeing from here.
I can pull it. Maybe at least that'll give you some.
But that painting stuff. So 3 to 6 feet in height. The retaining wall, the furthest south retaining wall is 4 feet in height, right? So it falls into the 3 to 6, which they're exempt, except
Except if it's facing into the
neighbor's
neighbor's
property.
property, it would be.
Yeah,
So B is not applicable because it's not holding it back, right? That would make B not applicable because it's the wrong side of the wall.
well, yeah. That's why I actually thought you were doing some kind of ground cover. That's why I thought it was, when I saw that 18-inch stuff, that's why I thought, oh, they've set that wall back 18 inches. They must be gonna plan to cover it up so that there's only a small amount exposed, but I don't think that works.
It's 4 feet at the highest, the east side, the west side, and then it slowly
On the south side.
disappears on the, going towards the east.
The average overall height, that's what it is. What might be. Crash course.
The biggest problem is the exposed side beam. Because if it's exposed, then it's subject to the regular. Because 3 to 6 in height may be located in a required non-street side or rear side setback area in residential zones and any setback area in non-residential zones, provided the exposed side of the wall faces into the subject property. And unfortunately, the exposed side is facing out. So I'm struggling because I can see
So in the planter box, what they've got listed here is the planter box. They're intended to put bushes and shrubs or some sort of a narrow tree thing or something maybe. And you were optimistic hoping that was going to slope on an angle. When you want to slope or something, trying to help cover up the wall, more of the wall with.
so that it wouldn't be exposed.
I see.
In 3 feet with slope, so.
Not a lot. It'd be pretty
6
steep,
inches.
and all that material just ends up in the neighbor's yard.
So what do you think, Rob?
I think the idea of putting a planter box there with, those narrow shrubbery bushes, I don't know what they're called, I think it's such a name. But, whatever those little bushes are called, it kind of tries to meet the spirit of what this ordinance is trying to accomplish. But it doesn't necessarily code when it comes to technical wording in that code. I'm struggling with it. If they're trying to accomplish something that needs to go with the code, it doesn't quite do it. And if you've added slope to the driveway to try to get that south side lower.
I mean, originally I was only going to do a 6-inch slope. I've gone to 12. So we'll have a 12-inch slope from the garage floor to the retaining wall. The main retaining wall will have a 12-inch slope. I'm a little nervous to go more than that. I mean, obviously it's,
Your other option would be to shrink it up a little, which makes your turning radius harder to get in and out. But
yeah, the homeowners really don't want to shrink it up. As far as, like the turn radius, like you're talking about, they just really help.
probably got a 20-foot long truck. Or something that he wants to try to get in and out of there without wrecking his garage door sides.
I actually was trying to see if there's any difference between a planter box and a retaining wall when it comes to the setback, but I really don't think there is.
Concrete walls.
Well, it's not so much what it's made of, it's that it just says every part of the required side yard shall be open and unobstructed, except for normal projections of windowsills, courses, concourses, chimneys, and other architectural features projecting no more than 24 inches into the required side yard. So So I don't think we're meeting ordinance, is my problem. As much as I would like to be able to say we are.
Have you brainstormed much else when it comes to other options that might help with the code as we recited it last time? Is there a third tier that could make sense even though they might lose 2 or 3 feet of their distance? I mean, they've got a pretty good distance there now. It looks like 32 feet from garage door to wall.
I think the problem, Rob, is the wording on,
And shrink that primary main wall, which they haven't afforded yet, not go as tall, do another tier.
but how are you getting away from the exposed side? On the first tier.
The first tier can't be more than 3. Is there a magic, when it's 4, is it 10 foot that you're trying to accomplish at that corner? Is that, are we splitting it at 4 and 6?
I'm not so much worried about the height of the wall, the slope of the driveway from where it goes into the garage to, but we'll probably end up pouring the retaining wall on a slope, and then we're going to pour the driveway, we're going to form up the driveway and pour over the top of that retaining wall. Which at that point, it'll be like 4 inches or so, but
But
I
you're
might pour the driveway into the retaining wall. I haven't quite decided that yet. That would put,
So it's below the retaining wall rather than putting a cap on top.
yeah.
The other question, just out of curiosity, and because as I read it, the greater than 6 can be at the setback, but not outside the setback. So once it gets back to the setback, I don't know that if he was on the 10-foot line, if he can get there. So the question is can it be cantilevered? Can you get to the 10-foot setback line? I guess that's the question I'd have. What would it take to get back to the 10-foot setback line?
I have to tear out all the footings poured right now. For the footing, because the footing has to be, it's 5 foot wide, and the engineering is the wall has to be in the middle of the footing. The way they've engineered the rebar to go down into the footing, that wall has to be placed on the footing in the right location. So the only way I could get that is to tear out everything I've done, so everything, all the footings we've poured so far.
But with structurally, would that achieve the goal we need to achieve? If you,
What are you looking for? Yeah. Come on.
if you were able to move the wall, the actual retaining wall, not the planter box wall, the actual retaining wall. If you move the actual retaining wall another, well, it would be 7 feet, right? Because it's 3 feet off the property line now. So if you moved it 7 feet, I think what Ryan was asking is, engineering wise, could the driveway cantilever out over the retaining wall for a distance of 7 feet? Is that what you're asking?
Or however many feet you need to accomplish for your driveway. I'm just, because this question's a lot easier if you're the setback line. The question, I mean, there's not an issue here at that point. I'm just trying to make it as, if there's a simple solution, obviously if that doesn't work, it's like, that is trying to take the different opportunities and say, well, if this doesn't work, or if this would work, this body would make it a lot easier to approve at a 10-foot line, and you're not worrying about 2 walls, and you're not worrying about, because at this point you're pouring a whole new retaining wall that and a base, and I mean, tearing out one for your footers, maybe one thing, but pouring a whole new retaining wall is an issue as well. I mean, it's cost wise, I don't know which, I'm not in the concrete, but I'm assuming there's a significant cost to both of those options.
Cost wise, moving it to 10 feet, the property line is going to be obviously a lot more expensive than what I'm proposing now.
For the other retaining wall.
Really quite costly at this point. I do have about 6 or 7 pictures of homes up in Providence Hollow where the retaining wall is right on the property line, and it's 8 to 12 feet tall. There's about 6 or 7 homes up there that have that. They're not 3 feet back. They're right on the property line. And they're anywhere from 8 to 12 feet tall.
And they could be relevant pictures depending on the body, as long as you have a date and we can reference whether this law was before or after.
They're new homes.
I mean, I'm just putting the points of it. If we could date those pictures date those buildings to the point of the ordinance, then we can, I mean, it's fair.
Maybe what you're seeing is the retaining wall might be pointing at their own property.
Oh yeah, who owns the retaining wall?
Property line is, wall might be on their own property, facing their own.
One of them, all of them are on the property line. The property line, the property that's next to it is not their property because there's other homes being built. There's other homes that have been built. And this is within, I don't know how old the ordinance is, but this is within the last, these homes are probably within the last 2 years. The oldest 2 years. I don't know. I mean, some of them could have done it after the fact, after they moved in. Some of them, one of them, they would have had to report it before they moved in to get their driveway, to get into their garage. They would have had to report it before they moved in. I know at least one of them, maybe 2 of them. So I just don't want to be singled out. I don't want to, like, cause problems with the ordinance either, but I'm hoping that what I'm showing and proposing is aesthetically, I mean, from the road, you really can't even see it. And you won't, and then the west side will be mostly covered. So I just don't feel like I'm really causing a major problem with neighbors. I've already explained to the neighbors what we were doing. He was okay with it. I don't feel like I'm gonna, like the end result, if we do what I'm proposing, is going to be, it's going to look good. And driving past it on the road, you won't even notice it's there because it's down behind almost down deep into the lot. It's not even up, where the rest of where you can see. The only person you can see is really just the neighbor.
I think the problem is you have to go back. So setbacks, so in the general setback requirements under 4, it says every part of a setback shall be unobstructed from the ground to the sky, except as otherwise provided in the code, and except for ordinary projections of sills, buttresses, cornices, chimneys, eaves, window wells, but in no such case shall projections exceed the distance restrictions for each yard height. In all cases, if a public utility easement is included in the setback, projections cannot extend into the public utility easement. So I don't even know if we can do the cantilever thing when we look at it. I mean, aesthetically, I know what you're talking, I can see what you're talking about, but the problem we got going on here is the definition of the setback itself, or not the definition, but the reason for the setback itself is to have this unobstructed area. And unfortunately, we're not achieving that. We've cut the unobstructed area up. I mean, you've got that driveway, and then you've got the planter box, but they're poles in the area that's not supposed to be obstructed. So that's
I understand.
why I'm trying to figure out, and I'm just not coming up with really good solutions, how to make, I mean, if we take just one little part of it and look at it, we can maybe make it work, but when you have to take the whole setback, the whole thing, and make it work, I'm really struggling with that. That's why if everything was 10 feet off, then we wouldn't be having any trouble, because then that setback would be unobstructed.
It would
So,
just be trouble for the homeowners. Because it really shrinks their driveway down. It makes it really difficult to the home. I mean, at 7 feet, it doesn't sound like, oh, that's no problem, but it is a problem. It makes it really difficult. And I understand what you're saying. Well, if you get the 10 foot, we wouldn't have a problem. We wouldn't have an issue.
and I guess we'll have to look at some of those other lots and see just exactly what's going on. But that's my problem, is trying to figure out how to make it all work. And in our,
I can tell in some of these other homes are Providence Hollow, I can tell some of them were probably after the fact, some of the retaining walls after they moved in for them. I'm sure they did. Some of them looks like they had to afford it before they moved in. Some of it get to the garage. But I went and looked at the property markers from the examples that I have, and they're right on the property. Most of them are on either side yard or backyard. They're either 8 to 12 feet tall, several of them. They're not so that tall. They're right around the property corner.
Ones like when you're going to follow the first left.
I'm sorry, but for the record, can you state your name?
Brandon Major. A couple of my friends have those setbacks, so I can text them and see that they know that they can be smart about.
Well, they may just get themselves in hot water, which we'll have to deal with that if we have to deal with that. But I think right now, we'll solve their problems, but not right now in this meeting. Right now, we got to figure out if there is a way for these people to utilize their home that they've got going on and their driveway and still stay compliant with the code. And I'm struggling with that part. And do we have a spec on parking lots, on the distance between the end of the parking stall to the other end of the parking stall? Do we have a spec on
In the
that?
commercial area. That's.
The parking stall is 18 feet, 19 feet.
Well, it's 18, but we always recommend 20.
But between, so the parking stall is, the length of the parking stall itself is 18.
Parallel parking scenario,
No, 90.
18.
Okay, so 18 feet.
About 10 per gutter. Might get an extra restriction that feet. Or in a commercial, it might just be a 1 foot gutter, but the asphalt parking has to be.
So the stripe is 18
Stripe
feet.
is 18.
And then there's 24 feet or 20 feet. And then the next stripe, if you've got parking on the left side and parking on the right, did that backwards. Parking on the right side, parking on the left side, and an aisle down the middle. How wide's the aisle?
Minimum 20.
Minimum 20. Problem of that is though, you got the cheat factor. If you've got a 20-foot long truck and you're backing out of one of the parking stalls, you kind of cheat a little bit if somebody else
You
isn't
back
parked
in and
there.
you put the bumper over the planter strip.
But you wouldn't have that here. It's knocked it down to 20. And I know it would make them real tight, but the only other thing I can do, I can ask our city attorney if I'm reading it too literally. But
And it might not hurt too to get the neighbor, before you know, coming angry at us to get that in writing.
problem of it is though, I don't know that a neighbor can authorize a violation of the code. I mean, even if they agree and they think it's a great idea,
Right, but as a land use body, we have some,
They could take ownership, which would change the conversation completely.
they could take ownership of the wall,
Right,
because then it would be facing their property.
right. So that's where the neighbor could take and solve by absolving that. Not a good one, and I don't know if the neighbor would do it, but it does change the conversation.
interpretation, that's why I like your idea with because it's understanding the spirit versus understanding the true interpretation of how it reads out to an attorney. That can vary in some degree. His interpretation on that rule and this and that.
Have another comment, Mike?
But, well, I suppose the question comes, if it's based on interpretation of the wording, we could send it to the attorney, or our judicial branch is the same as our legislative branch. And if the administrative side says this is not clear enough to read, my thought is does that give it the ability for this body to refer it to the judicial branch, which is the council, for a judicial decision? Anyway, it was just a thought as we went. They haven't ruled on it, so you'd have to deny it before they could take it to appeal authority.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the judicial side. It's a month down the road. No, I wouldn't like it. I'm not proposing. I'm just trying to think through the options. So I'm just trying to, because this is more an administrative one, and our judicial branch of determining that. I mean, we could take that to our attorney and certainly ask. That delays you another meeting, and I'm not sure whether that's gonna happen. That's a foregone conclusion or not. You guys are deciders, so whatever you guys.
The setback ones we're talking about there, the spirit of the retaining wall over there. I think the planter box idea is trying to meet that spirit and cover that up and make it more aesthetically pleasing. If we have something in writing from the neighbors next door, I would feel a whole lot better as far as retaining wall stuff goes, but the setback is kind of a different animal. I would recommend that we talk to the attorney for an interpretation there to clarify.
Yeah, I build pretty fast, so, but I do have time on that. I mean, we'll probably, my original plan was hoping to pour that driveway by the 1st of November, the latest is when I was hoping to pour it. Of course, I'd have to pour the walls first. They gotta set up for about 9 to 10 days before I can start backfilling this. And so as much as I want to go forward and keep building a home for them. I do have time to explore other things, you know. I do have some time to do that. That's what I really super resistant carrying out footings, but obviously for obvious reasons. But it's not holding me back from building the home right now itself. It's exploring as much as we need to.
Have you dug foundation for the rest of the home?
The rest of the home is spring.
Oh.
Our rough ones, we're almost done with our rough mechanical.
Try to do a front loading.
I just asking. I'm sorry, I haven't
So
looked at that house to this point.
These homeowners, their dream was to have this side entrance garage. I tried to talk them out of it, but they really wanted this side entrance garage. I didn't know the ordinance. I thought they came over. But so it's fine.
Well, I think we're gonna have to continue it one more time.
Sure.
Because here's the problem. If, first of all, even if we feel like it's the right thing to do, we can't approve something that may be violating the ordinance. Unless we can justify it, and I wouldn't dare do that without the attorney that comes in, or the council, one of those two bodies saying, yes, you're justified in that. Because if somebody were to challenge and they came back and we couldn't justify it, then you're sunk. And so, because we say right on the applications that if you know you're violating the, I mean, it's not that clear, but it does let you know that you have to know. Even if we screw up and approve something, we can't let you can't violate the ordinance. And so, so I am not really comfortable with the way this is right now. So I think it's a good effort, and I'm trying to figure out if there was a way to make it be a workable solution, but I just don't want to take that responsibility on at this point.
No, I understand. If you present it to them, that's fine. I can't wait for that. I don't know how long the timeline, what would that take? to go through?
Well, I guess my other question when it comes to a possible remedy, which obviously the homeowners and you might not like when it comes to shrinking the turning radius into that driveway, into the garage. But by moving that back to the setback, to the 10-foot setback line, like you lose 7 feet, and whether or not they can make that turn and lose 7 feet of that, the width of that radius. There's a solution there that you could probably still utilize your footing to help with that solution without removing it.
Not if he has to have the wall in the middle of the footing.
Move it 7 feet out.
Yeah, the footing's got to come out.
Footings up.
Well, that footing is 3 feet on the property line, right? So you end up doing another wall.
Footing is a foot off the property line. It's 5 feet wide, but it's only the side of the footing is only a foot off the property line. So, and then the walls in the center of that footing, that's where you're going to put about 3 feet. So in order to move it 7 feet, I would have to, I mean, I could leave that footing and pour a new one. Not tear it out.
And that's kind of where I was envisioning there.
Yeah.
And more or less creating a slope there that's buried.
I think the homeowner is hoping for the, we can work it out, we can give them the most possible project they can do it. Long term, I mean, really helpful for them, honestly, to give them as much as we can give them. Like I said, if we, you know, whatever you guys want to do with hearings part, when counselor or lawyer, I'm okay waiting. I have time. I have time. So, So we
I move we continue this to the next meeting. Okay, motion by Scarlett Bankhead, second by Rob Stapley. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we will continue until, and for the record, Max is excused. So we'll continue it. We'll try and get some definition or
Guidance,
guidance and
clarification.
go from there.
want me to follow up to a certain amount of time, or you want me, if you don't mind? I know I'll make, I've told the property owner to the south what we're doing. I haven't given him one of these drawings that I made, but I'll make sure he gets one of those so he understands. Do I need to call in or follow up at some point? You want me to just wait until the next meeting?
I will, we'll figure out the best method for us to go, and then we'll let you know. And so give us, if you haven't heard from us in a week, call Diane and see what we've done. So we may not have an answer, but it will always have kind of a plan as to the direction we're going. Okay? All right, thanks.
Thank you.
So now we've got the plan, and it looks like we've got Cody and Myra. Okay, our next item is a conditional use for a new home. The Providence City Administrative Land Use Authority will consider for approval a request by Cody Bland for a new home located at 59 South 300 East in Providence. So do you want to come up to the table, and Diane, if you want to introduce this for us, that would be great.
Okay, this application was received August 31st. Rob Stapley inspected the current infrastructure actually today, so I need to change that to the 15th. And we have a letter from Aaron Walker, the fire inspector, dated September 8th. Findings of fact are as stated in the staff report that I'm assuming you guys got. And conclusions of law, the only difference with this agenda item is that this GIS parcel summary indicates that the parcel is in a hazard wildfire area. It says slopes on the GIS parcel summary, but they are outside of the actual property line, so it won't be an issue. The request meets the codes, meets requirements of codes listed in the findings of fact with the following conditions. The applicant will continue to meet all relevant federal, state, county, and Providence City rules, laws, codes, and ordinances. And they will mitigate the fire hazard by complying with the requirements indicated in the letter from Aaron Walker dated September 8th. This conditional use is for the residents only as shown on a site plan date stamped September 1st, 2021. Is that correct? Does it say September 1st on the site plan? Doesn't seem right.
Like, I'll scoot back there.
Yeah, I think you're right.
September 1st.
Yeah. Okay. Approval by the city of any submitted application or paperwork does not alleviate the owners and or their agents from their responsibility to understand and conform to local, state, and federal laws. Providence City's approval is not intended to and cannot be construed to allow any laws to be violated.
Thanks, Diane. So do you have any questions? Okay. So just really quickly for the record, going down Aaron's review, the existing access is adequate from 300 East, and that's the reason you're in here is for the fire. So that's why we're just going to focus on his. The fire hydrants, there's fire hydrant 120 and fire hydrant 121 are both within the allowed distance. Then he also talks about fire water flow, and for a home that's approximately 3,246 square feet in size, the fire flow requirements are 15 gallon or 1,500 gallons per minute at 20 psi. There are 2 hydrants within 600 feet of the proposed site. Hydrant 120 is the closest to the building site and has approximately 2,207 gallons per minute at 20 PSI. So that's adequate. And then he talks about the urban wildland interface, the roof coverings, per an email discussion with Cody Bland. You're planning on a Class A roof covering, and that's approved. Per the email discussion with Cody, you're planning on closing all underfloor decks and eaves with soffits, that's approved. And per the email discussion with Cody, you're planning on installing 1/8-inch mesh screen on all openings, and so that's approved. In Providence City Code, we have 5 points. 3 of the 5 are covered in the Wildland Urban Code. The other 2 points are that we encourage property owners to inspect the property regularly, clearing dead wood and dense vegetation from at least 30 feet around your house. Rake piles of leaves and twigs if on a hill. More space will be needed to protect your home. A fuel break should be maintained around all structures, and then move firewood away from the house or attachments like fences or decks. So just do good housekeeping things. I know it seems unusual to be in a wildland fire zone where you feel like you're kind of in downtown area, but there is some vegetation around there that I guess if we don't designate that, that's actually something the state fire marshal looks at, and they're the ones that have the criteria that they have to meet. And so we just follow what they've already established. Do you have any questions or concerns about any of that?
No, I think it makes sense.
Okay. Is there anybody in the, Brian or Diane, anything? Rob, you out.
I've got not necessarily wildfire related comments or question marks. However, we're here. Luckily, that's a 12-inch water main out there in the street. Otherwise, I don't think it's net fire flow needs fire suppression system. But there's a very large water main, which there is not currently a service to that lot. Is that correct? I couldn't find one today, and I don't remember ever seeing one there. So you got water and sewer cuts to that roadway until it's starting.
Are there any other, because he has to put the improvements in, are there any other improvements?
We're just building a single lot on the existing parcel. There's some great improvements I can think of, but we're not going to want to.
Actually, you can't do those until you determine for sure what's
Where
going on with that water line. So even,
So the Blacksmith Fork line
Yeah.
is not really interfered with their footprint whatsoever.
right,
It's gonna affect the parcel to the north more. Whoever buys that parcel and wants to build on the parcel to the north is gonna have a expensive struggle unless the city chips in and we want to relocate that pipe as well, which would be great. But
but they do still have their active subdivision in process, so. So what minimum improvements would they need to do to get their,
road.
You're coming up, which street are you coming off of?
It's for him.
We don't require curb and gutter. I don't know how far the downtown street cross section profile goes. To make it 30. Pretty sure. Does research that a little bit. Oh, map got pulled up. That is a very narrow road. Be a bit of a challenge maybe to widen that much because the slope drops off pretty fast, which actually brings up another question mark when it comes to your sewer depth. Have you surveyed or have any idea how deep the sewer main is on 3rd East? your basement gonna be able to gravity to it?
So we've done a survey, we're in the process of doing a survey, I'm not quite sure where
You
that
very well
is.
might have to have an ejection pump for it.
Yeah, we don't know for sure, but we have kind of thought about that.
And just be very, very aware of that existing irrigation pressurized line in the back there.
Right.
Because it's very critical to the city's drinking water infrastructure. Is one way to put it, and they don't want to accidentally send that close there or something like that.
As part of the survey process, we've actually got it marked exactly where it is on the property. So when we submit the survey, it'll be listed where it is. Yeah.
Survey.
So you're not, so the only thing you're gonna require right now is this extension of the water and sewer. The service lines into that.
Yeah, they don't have utility stuff in the lot.
Okay. So, and when we talk about utilities, we talk about water and sewer because they're the ones we provide. Question on fiber. Is there something they would have to do as far as extending anything or?
That would depend on when they construct. I don't know how quickly you're looking to construct.
Our plan is to do it as soon as we are able, but it obviously is hold up to.
So
Able is next week or 3 years. Anyway, we would ask that when you put in when you know where your power is going to go, that you contact us so that the fiber could be laid in there. At this point, if it's within the next short period of time, we'd probably lay that. The longer it goes, the more it'll be on you to lay. But so.
where they're at in the subdivision. They're building a house on
They're waiting for you to get back to them about where the,
their survey, man.
Yeah.
so you found the line, you know for sure where it goes.
Yeah, we had a company come and I'm not sure what software, not software, what kind of equipment they use, but we're able to
Oh,
find the exact location of the pipe, and then the surveyor took those markings and is including them on his survey that he's doing.
okay. Well, then if you've got that figured out, that's what we were waiting for. So if you've got that figured out, I'll go back and look at your concept and see if there's anything else you needed, but that seems to me like.
Might be nice if they have survey grade data for that if they could share with us, and so we could.
Already done.
So I'll get with you on that. So is there anything else, Rob, that you want to bring up on this?
This home, so help me understand how this home is going to go on the existing single parcel. And now and they're subdividing, and when they subdivide, it's going to break up the back side and side of it. So therefore, they can build this home without being affected by the subdivision rules. Right?
Right.
That's why we're
Right,
at.
because, yes, because they're in the subdivision, the access to the back lot is on the south, the south side of the property, right?
Yes.
So it's down here along the south property line. So the home's far enough away that it's not going to disrupt. And if it does disrupt their subdivision, they'll have to figure out a
But it
different
is,
configuration.
you are the couple that's going to actually do the subdividing. So I guess that does bring up another intricate point when it comes to if in the subdivision process, that blacksmith work pump line has to get relocated and altered to whatever degree. That relocation is likely we're going to want it to go down 30 east, by the road or under the road. It's much more desirable than backyard and side yard. And so if you're going to build this home sooner than later, especially in relation to subdivision plans, keep that in mind for front yard landscaping, understanding that you might be required to put in some pipe in the frontage of this home. Therefore, you're going to want to keep that even super mind that it, because I actually had the fiber optics that went down 30, pushed to the east far enough to leave room with that pipe in a new location someday. Because I'd much rather see that down the road. Because it's got, I don't know if you're familiar with where it bubbles up out and the current air, that air vent that seriously works quite well, but not great. But that air vent needs to be revamped and figure out how to make it work in order to ever build on that lot.
So here's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm thinking we could probably, go ahead with the conditional use, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the zoning clearance is ready to go as part of that. Because I think you need to make sure, I mean, if they know where that line is, Rob, some of these questions that you're talking about that are subdivision questions, I don't know where they come in relationship to the zoning approval. But in relationship to what you need to do to meet the fire code, I think we can approve that. But I don't want to, I guess I want to make it clear that our approval does not necessarily mean that the zoning is accurate. That they're kind of two separate things. No, for the single family, because there are some requirements with the extension of the water line and the sewer line. I just want to make sure that if you're going to have to do anything different, that we know about it before we give you the full blown go ahead on this. But that's completely separate to the ability to meet the conditional use that we're here for. So I'm just saying, we can give you the conditional use, but that doesn't mean there aren't some things zoning and construction wise that you would still need to work out. Okay. All right, so then I would move that we approve the conditional use for that the plans have requested for a home located at 59 South, 300 East, based on the findings of fact and conclusions and conditions presented in the staff report, and also with the understanding that we're approving the conditional use. There may be some items that are associated with the zoning and the construction that will pop up after, but we're just approving that what you proposed meets the wildland fire area. So anyway, Rod, that's my motion. Okay, motion by Scarlett Bankhead, second by Rob Stakely. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Voting unanimous. So we'll beat that. We'll go over a few things to make sure that we've got the zoning nailed down for you, and then we'll issue everything. All righty. You have any other questions? Okay. Thank you. Brandon, you're not on our agenda, but you're here.
I'm just happy to be here and see. I'm going to be on the next one, and so it was just good to see how the process works. So I actually have a retaining wall that is probably going to be the exact same issue. So it was funny that I came in right now.
Oh, shoot.
Well, I don't know that it's going to be the same. But
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're off
I just
agenda.
wanted to make sure we weren't missing something. Yeah.
So
So,
here for
yeah. Okay. Make your motion.
that motion we adjourn.
I second that motion. Motion by Rob Stakely, second by Scarlett Bankhead. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Our meeting is adjourned at 3:40.